What's up? Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the Pot at the Palace. Curtis Wilkerson here with Inside Arkansas. A little game day preview. Hogs are back at it, taking on Florida, a really, really good Florida team that's playing as well as anyone in the country here in what's a snowy Fayetteville, 3 o'clock ESPN. Okay, here we go. Back to the grind, right? I did not call the Ole Miss game a must-win. I called it a prove-it game for Arkansas, but after it didn't go their way, I know that it's still early in SEC play. I know it's still January. They're creeping up on that territory here. You just can't afford to dig yourself into too deep of a hole in what's a really, really good SEC this year. Arkansas needs some more meat on the bone on the resume. This is a massive one for the Razorbacks. It is. And I mean, literally nobody right now expects Arkansas to beat Florida today. But I'm telling you, they better find a way because if not, this team's going to find itself in what could be a pretty sticky situation in terms of trying to dig out of a hole that's getting deep in the standings, and then just momentum for the program. They need a momentum boost. They need a jolt. So we'll see what happens. All right. If we're being transparent here, Florida coming to town under the current circumstances, theirs and Arkansas, it's a nightmare scenario for the Razorbacks. This is not a good matchup for Arkansas. It doesn't mean they can't win the game. It certainly doesn't mean they're not talented enough to do that. It wouldn't surprise me at all. If this team comes out and plays to its potential, if they were able to do something pretty special here, we just haven't seen a lot of consistent signs of them being close to doing that the last couple days games. They just got to flip the switch. But some of the Gators' biggest strengths are the Razorbacks' most glaring weaknesses coming into this game. They're in a position where they're firing all cylinders, and the Hogs are kind of reeling, just in search of any type of identity, I guess, to kind of cling on to there. Florida's kind of playing with house money, after that win over Tennessee there, whereas as Arkansas should be playing with a level of urgency and desperation. We're not even sure at the moment if they have that in them. They're kind of back into prove it mode from that standpoint. At least I feel like a lot of the fan base feels that way. It's like I said just a second ago, Arkansas has got the horses to get this done. They're going to have to play their best game. I think it'll require the team that we saw for like the middle 20 minutes against Michigan to sustain that effort for 40 minutes at home. It would be a first, but it's a possibility there because Florida, they're very good, but they're not some juggernaut. Okay, this is not the Florida teams from the Billy Donovan era that won back-to-back national championships. This isn't anything like that. They're just playing really, really well right now, and they're a team that, like I said, it's just not a great matchup. In a number of areas there for Arkansas. It's not a giant to be slayed here. I just think they're light years ahead of where the Razorbacks are right now. But the beauty of college basketball is anything can happen on a given day. It's just up to Arkansas to believe that and then play like it. And that's what's been frustrating, I think, for folks over the course of the last week is they haven't played like it. It might require some vintage Bud Walton magic, which why would I expect that to happen given everything we've talked about this week, the crappy weather in Arkansas that's probably going to impact attendance? I think because it's not necessarily about the number of folks in the building as much as the energy inside of it that makes that place special. If Arkansas has a top 10 team on the ropes and they're playing with the type of effort and intensity, the Razorback fans are drawn to, the building's going to be rocking. I think it's just the ball is in the team's court now in terms of controlling that narrative. So we'll see what happens there. I'm open-minded, not overly optimistic, but buddy, it'd be a big one if they could figure out a way to get it done here and would change a lot of the stinking thinking going on surrounding the program at the moment. So let's get into the preview here. Florida, Ty Golden, he's got a tight 8-man rotation, plays 4 guards, 4 bigs. And he doesn't deviate unless there's foul trouble or it's a major blowout or something like that. I think that this is a team that is led by its backcourt, but fueled by its front court. It's, like you hear the term complementary football, offense, defense, special teams. Florida has that on the basketball floor, offensively and defensively, with their guards, with their front court. It's Ty Golden's got a good roster. He really does. He's put together something nice here. Their guard trio of Walter Clayton, Elijah Martin, and Will Richard, I think it's as good as any in the country. I really do. All three of those guys are legitimate playmakers. They can really go get their own at any time. The one thing I will say is that they don't really have a true point guard. And I thought that actually showed in that game against Kentucky, which another reason why we can point to and say, hey, they're human. They looked really, really good in that game at Rupp, but they lost to Kentucky and they're on the road. And this is a Kentucky team that we know can be very, very good, but they're not more talented than Arkansas is. They just played connected and very much together in that game. So gettable. They just got to go out there and show it. All three of these guards, they kind of look the same. Like they're in that 6'3" range, all over 200 pounds. They're all grown-ass men, big, strong, physical dudes. Walter Clayton, I think he's a pro. I mean, he's probably the head of the snake of the operation here. 17 and a half a game. He's been tremendous for him. Will Richard has kind of been his backcourt running mate for a number of years there. He's averaging 13.4 points and 5 rebounds per game. And then you got Elijah Martin, who shared a backcourt with John L. Davis for years at Florida Atlantic. They led the Owls to a Final Four together. They went to another NCAA tournament together. The interesting thing is that Davis was the alpha on those teams, but Martin has been by far the better SEC player so far this year. He's been a really good addition for him. 16 points per game and nearly 6 rebounds for Elijah Martin. And he's given him some pop from three as well. Big, strong, physical guard. And those two are going to be, facing off against each other. So it's kind of an interesting sidebar storyline, I guess, to this game. But with those guards, like having three guys like that is a major luxury because it's super rare for all of them to suck on the same day. And then each of them are capable of shouldering the load and winning a game, kind of flying solo if they need to. Case in point, Richard and Clayton both got held in single digits. They scored 7 points apiece against Tennessee. Martin had 18. They won the game. Now, they played really good defense in that one and controlled the glass is what it is. But just saying, sometimes it's like, well, if we can shut down one of those guys or two of those guys or whatever, man, it's either one of them can be Superman on a given night. That front court, though, man, it possesses a major problem, I think, for Arkansas. If you watch Florida play Kentucky or especially Tennessee, you just saw massive body after massive body grabbing offensive rebounds, which they are top 5 in the country at doing. Remember how much of a pain in the butt the Igor Milicic dude from Tennessee was? Wait until you get a load of Alex Condon from Florida, who is bigger, more skilled, and even better on the backboard. 6'11", 230, really, really good on the glass. He can step out and shoot a little bit. That's going to be a tough matchup for Arkansas's 4 men in this game. So it makes you wonder, Thero, he struggled, I think, with the length of Milicic in that game against Tennessee. Now you got a guy who's longer and equally versatile. Is that the matchup they go with? Do they slide him up to the 3 and actually go big and start Trevin Brazile in there? I don't know. It's going to be I'm intrigued to see what they do with the starting lineup, because then the other starter in the front court is Ruben Chinyelu, who he's a monster. He's 6'10", 260 pounds. Reminds me of Oscar Tshiebwe when it comes to just his tenacity and his nose for the ball when it comes off the rim. Those two guys, Condon and Chinyelu, combined for 27 rebounds, 10 offensive against Tennessee, a Tennessee team that got 24 offensive rebounds against Arkansas. So you're going to do the transitive property thing. There you have it. And then they keep them fresh. They got 2 guys who rotate in who are good players, Thomas Houck and Sam Alexis, both 6'9", big bodies who do the same thing. Houck is a guy who will kind of remind you of Condon in the way that he plays and got some more versatility to him. Sam Alexis, more meat on his bones, more of a physical presence in there that can replace Chinyelu. So it's a deep front court that's coming to Arkansas at a time where their front court depth is challenged a little bit because is he still hurt? Can he play? Adu hasn't. He's kind of no-showed since the start of SEC play here, and then you got Trevin, when I say bad matchup, that's kind of where you're at. So how are they going to overcome that? The rotation guard, I mentioned 8 players. We talked about 7 of them. It's Denzel Aberdeen, 6'5", athletic, really, really good minutes for them off the bench. So, the Gators are good. They're balanced. Top 5 offense in the country, top 20 defense in the country, according to the efficiency ratings over at KenPom. And they shoot the 3 pretty well, although they have the tendency to be streaky, and Arkansas is going to need them to be, I think, in this game. And then, like maybe you can turn them over a little bit too. They've shown some tendencies with that as well. Like how can Arkansas go about finding a way to win this game? Because that's what everybody wants to know, right? I think obviously it starts with defensive rebounding and physicality. That's an absolute must in this game. We had Chuck Martin before they practiced on Friday, and that's kind of what he was saying. Like he gets it, man. When you look at that Florida front court, it's toughness, it's physicality, and Arkansas has to match that, and they need more out of their front court. Arkansas's 3 forwards who played against Ole Miss combined for 5 points. We talked about Jonas Adu not getting any shot attempts. That just can't be a thing. And when Martin was asked about it, and I agree with this, it's twofold in terms of getting those guys going. One, they need to be more aggressive on the offensive glass themselves. How do big men usually rack up their points? It's being tough around the boards, getting easy putbacks, just kind of cleaning up the trash, right? And then the other part of it, and I'm glad that he said this, is essentially they just need to get the guards to open their eyes and start seeing their big men and get that cohesion going. And I agree, because there's a lot of missed opportunities on pick and rolls where Arkansas is not getting the ball inside for easy scoring opportunities there. So we'll see what they do on the glass. What I will say is it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because on the offensive end, Arkansas needs to really play fast, right? I mean, we see when they get into their half-court offense for long stretches, and it's every game now. They'll go on cold streaks, and it's just a little bit stagnant. They're not crisp right now in the half court, but where they are is in transition. And that's where Arkansas has an advantage when they get their athletes out in the open floor and can attack with numbers. So you got to create those opportunities. An easy way to do that is to just leak out a guard or two to kind of fill the wings, to get a rebound, kick it up the floor, and go. You can't necessarily afford to do that against Florida, because you're going to need all your big men boxing out, and you're going to need your guards chipping in to help on the glass. So you're not going to be able to do it that way, which means you're going to have to really sprint up the floor in transition and push the issue, which takes me back to something Cal said after the game the other night of he feels like he needs to sub a little bit quicker because he's letting guys get too fatigued. Agreed. I think he does, because they're going to have to force the pace and force the tempo. I think is going to be important in this game. It would be easy to say 3-point defense. Arkansas's allowed 9 threes apiece to both Tennessee and Ole Miss, and I think they both shot about 39% in SEC play. But for me, it's more about everything that leads to those open threes. It's the breakdowns and help side, the miscommunication, getting caught in rotations, late on closeouts. It's all those things that leads to the threes as opposed to contesting them. Because in most cases, Arkansas is there. They're just a step and a half late because they get behind, they get caught up in reversals. That can't happen. So that's something that really needs to improve for them. It's interesting that continues to be a problem when you're switching, because it should eliminate a lot of that. But I kind of go back to what I was talking about yesterday. Man, maybe just simplify it a little bit. And it's like, hey, Nelly, you've got Elijah Martin, and DJ, you've got Walter Clayton, whatever. Like, these are your matchups. Know your matchups inside and out. Yeah, there are going to be times where you get caught up in a switch or a different matchup or whatever. But just knowing your specific assignment and really being glued to a guy, maybe that's what this team needs right now. It's where they can just play instead of think so much. I don't know. On the other end, we talked about Arkansas needing to maybe overdo it, force the issue a little bit in terms of tempo. I think that's a must. I also think it's just like actually making some threes again. Arkansas has been struggling in SEC play with their 11 of 52, I think is the stat that we pulled in these 2 games. Listen, I didn't think Arkansas was going to shoot 37% the entire year like they did in non-conference play. But I certainly didn't think they would completely fall off of a cliff. There's got to be a nice middle ground there. And it's all about shot selection. I mean, my goodness, if you think about it, like what is Arkansas doing in the half court? You got 4 guys standing around, 1 guy attacking and just kind of kicking out, and it's contested threes, late clock threes, off the dribble threes. Those aren't the ones you want. So again, where it's like 3-point defense, a lot of it is about everything that leads up to teams getting open threes. Well, shooting better threes, sometimes it's not just about making it so much as it's creating better looks that are more high percentage. And I think that's an issue that Arkansas has got to try to figure out here as well. They need to make them to be able to stretch the defense and give you some room to operate downhill. I get it. Arkansas is at its best when they're driving the lane and getting to the rim. So people think, well, why don't they just do that? You got to create gaps somehow, or there's nowhere to drive, or you wind up like Thero has in some of these games where he's trying to do that, and then he just runs into a wall of 3 or 4 guys, and maybe he turns it over. So if they're not going to be able to create gaps organically through their motion with good cuts and screens, which is not really something that they're doing much of right now, you got to be able to stretch the floor and space it out a different way, which means knocking down shots and making the Florida defenders a little bit leery about leaving their man to help. Maybe it pulls one of those big men out of the paint if Trevin or Z are able to knock down a couple threes. So I think the 3-point shot is definitely going to be important for Arkansas in this game. If it was me, I'd start John L. Davis. I thought they should have in the last game because of some things I noticed on the defensive end of the floor against a team like Ole Miss with Carter. He struggled on the defensive end of the floor. John L. had a really encouraging game offensively, but then he struggled defensively too. But what I will say is for the most part this season, he's been good on that end of the floor. So can we just get it to all come together for him? What I would do is put him on his buddy, Elijah Martin, and say, this is you and him the entire game. Just try to force the competitor out of him. And let's see if he takes a step forward in this one. Boogie, got to get back to the basics. He's been so good and efficient up until the last couple games, and 5 of 15 against Tennessee, 5 of 20 in that game against Ole Miss. What is he now? 3 of 17 or whatever from 3 in SEC play. That's not going to get it done, and so really putting a focus on initiating the offense, getting the other guys involved, and those shots, more high percentage shots, are going to come organically for him. And I think just putting a focus on being more of a playmaker as opposed to just a scorer is going to be important for him. Arkansas needs to get him going because as he goes, they go, and he hasn't gone very far so far in SEC play. I think you need a double-double from Jonas Adu. And I don't think that's too much to ask from a guy who was all SEC last year and preseason all SEC this year. He's no-showed in 2 games here in league play, picking up an early foul in the first minute of both of those games, and he's on his heels, maybe playing a little bit passive defensively. Can't happen. He's played 17 minutes in the last 2 games. Can't happen. You need 25-plus minutes from him. You need a double-double if you're going to have a chance to win this game. I think it's that important. You're at a disadvantage in the front court against Florida. So you need your best guy in there to have his best game to counteract that as much as possible. The main thing, really, I think they just have to play their tails off for 40 minutes, just relentless effort. Clean up the body language a little bit, show that mental toughness. We keep hearing how this team's fighters, they have this will to win. And I think Razorback fans are really itching to see that, especially when you know how talented that this team actually is. So prove Cal right when he says those things about you, and man, prove everybody wrong who's made Arkansas the butt of the national jokes the last week. Now, I think it's time for this team, like you can be in a situation where you're still trying to figure things out and find an identity. But like as Kamani Johnson once famously and poetically said, it's nut dropping time. Like sometimes you just got to put them on the table and go out there and play and act like you're better than your opponent out there. I think that's what folks need to see from Arkansas here. I hope that they do their part in this game to get Bud Walton Arena rocking. We were talking on Inside Arkansas Live on Friday about, like, somebody asked the question, like, hey, if Arkansas beats this top 10 Florida team, do they storm the floor? And my instinct right away was like, hell no, you don't storm the floor for Florida. But you know what? When we're in this situation where you're trying to get the team more connected with the fan base, you want the players to have more pride with the Razorback on the front of their jersey and everything. Why the hell not? If it gets that rowdy, you get the top 10 win, do it. I don't care. because then it brings everybody together, right? And it might set the tone for future atmospheres. I think it's that important for this this home crowd thing to get rectified a little bit. And like we said, it's got to be a symbiotic relationship between the folks in the building and the team on the floor. So we'll see. But yeah, 3:00 ESPN. We'll see what happens. And regardless of the outcome, we'll be back for the Pot the Palace post game show, live reaction afterwards. So either celebrating with a huge exhale after a top 10 win, or my goodness, it's back to the drawing board and the pits of despair if they fall to 0-3 in an SEC that's really, really good this year. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. As always, been Curtis Wilkerson with Inside Arkansas on the Pod at the Palace, and we'll catch you guys after the game. Everybody have a good one.